everybody, and welcome back. Today is my summer unhaul. As you guys know, I like to do an unhaul every 3 months, just get some stuff off of my shelves and make way for new things. And it's time for the summer one. It's hot outside. It is absolutely 150% summer here. I think today and tomorrow the high is reaching 100 degrees, and I am not the type of person that loves summer. I'm just one of those people that would rather it be cold, or at least like not so humid, because where I live in the South, basically hot just means stick, which sucks. But it does mean some good pool weather. It does mean 4th of July and good cookouts and grilling, and so there are some good things that come with summer for sure, but just not my preferred season. So we got to do some unhaul, or we got to unhaul some books. As you guys probably saw, I recently did a build my library with me where I got 2 new bookshelves and reorganized my library. In the process of that, I did pull a pretty decent amount of things off of my shelves that I know that I either did not love, will not reread, just don't need copies of on my shelves anymore. And so I want to share with you guys what those books were and why I decided to get rid of them. So I guess let's just jump in. I did not organize these in a beautiful way. Normally I will give you like the fantasy books and the sci-fi books and the thriller books and the horror books. Yeah, no, I didn't do that this time. So we're just gonna jump in. I'm gonna pull the first book off the stack and we'll see what genre it ends up being as we go. The first one I'm gonna unhaul is Stay Awake by Megan Golding. This one is one that I read with Kaylee. It was actually, I think, our first buddy read, so shout out to Kaylee. But neither one of us ended up loving this one. It's about a woman that is constantly staying awake. Every time she falls asleep, she forgets what's happened since the last time that she woke up. And this one just, I did not love it. I found that the main character was very chaotic and kind of dumb and made a lot of really dumb decisions. And then the twist at the end, I just did not love this one. So I gave it 2 stars. I don't need to keep it. And so I'm going to pass it off to a better home. This one that I haven't read, and that's Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. I heard a lot of good things about this one, but I just don't think that this type of story is one that I'm going to gravitate or love anymore. It is a courtroom type mystery thriller, but it's not really a thriller. I believe it is involving a town where there was an explosion of something called the Miracle Submarine, and it killed a lot of people, and they're trying to figure out exactly what happened, what went wrong. I do think this has some court scenes in it, and it was one that I was holding on to for a while because it sounds good and it sounds like something that I would probably like in theory, but I think in execution it's most likely going to be a little bit too slow for me, and I've had this on my shelves for like 5 years now. I don't need to keep keeping it because I'm not going to read it if I haven't already. Next up we have The Immortal Thief by Taryn Hunt. This one was a Goldsboro book that I got, I can't remember what month, but it was one of the SSF Goldsboro editions, and I read this for Realmathon, ended up DNFing it about 60% of the way through. I just wasn't having a good time. It's a sci-fi horror, but it's a very basic sci-fi horror to me. There's a spaceship, there's things that are trying to kill them on this spaceship, and they are trying to basically get the Holy Grail, the eternal life, whatever it was, I don't remember. But I just did not love the way the world building was done in this one. I wasn't a huge fan of the way that the horror elements were done. I was just pretty bored. So I'm going to pass this one on. It is a beautiful edition. It's got gorgeous sprayed edges, and in papers it's signed. I don't have the clear cover that comes on it anymore because I hate those, but I just thought that this was too pretty to just sit on my shelves when I didn't like it, so we're gonna let somebody else put it on their shelves. Alright, next up we have This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi. This is one I actually think that Maria is incidentally reading right now and not absolutely loving, so that just gives me an even more reassurance that it needs to go. It's a beautiful edition. It's the Illumicrate edition. It's gorgeous, but it just, I don't think it's going to be something that I gravitate toward. I've had this for probably 1 year to 2 years now, and never once have I thought about picking it up. So again, too pretty of a book to just sit on my shelves for no reason, so I am going to pass this one along. I don't even know what this one's about. Next up we have The Chain by Adrienne McKinney. This one, I liked the first half, hated the second half, and so I think that I'm never going to reread this, and I did not absolutely love it, so it probably just needs to go. This is following a chain where mother's daughters are taken, and then in order to get their kid back, they have to go take another mother's child, and it just sets off like a chain reaction. That synopsis is really, really cool, and the first half of that, definitely the synopsis, really enjoyed it. The second half like went completely off of its rocker, and I don't even know what it was trying to do at that point, so It doesn't need to stay on my shelves. Then we have I Know Who You Are by Alice Feeney. This one I was keeping because for two reasons. One, I have liked some Alice Feeney before, so I wanted to read this one. It's one of the first ones she put out. And the other reason is because Lexi absolutely hated it and will rant about it if you ask her at all, ever. And it's hilarious. And I really just wanted to see for myself what the rant was all about, but I did have Lexi spoil it for me. I haven't read this, so I can't really give you a huge description, and now all I know is the way that it ends, and so I don't want to give you a description because pretty sure I would spoil it. But basically I think there's this woman and she is famous or something, and then there is a book or a journal or something like that. I don't know. I really should give you a synopsis for this because I do not know what it's about. Next up we have an indie, and I am not unhauling this because I didn't like it. I'm not unhauling this because I'm not interested in this. I'm unhauling this because Amazon sent me 2 copies and I only needed 1, and I want to spread the indie love and give it to someone else so that I can read the copy that I have while also sharing a copy myself, especially since this is such a beautiful cover. I mean, I absolutely love this. This is in Spiffbo 9. It's not in my batch or Cassidy's batch, but it is in the competition, so I'm very excited to read this hopefully soon. But this one is the of Thieves and Shadow by B.S.H. Garcia, and I'm very excited to read this one. It says some secrets are best left to the shadows, but the shadows have a mind of their own. I'm very excited to get to this one, so I just wanted to pass this extra copy along. Definitely not getting rid of this because I'm not interested in it. Then we have In the Woods by Tana French. I asked some people a few weeks ago if I should keep this one or not. A lot of people said that they liked it, but the resounding response was that this was fine, but that they didn't love it, and then future books in the series were also fine, but they didn't love it, and so I'm like, I don't really need to keep it. I tried this one twice, I think, and DNF'd it both times just because I felt like it was a little bit too slow. If I decide that I want to read this later, I can always get it from the library, but it's something that's been on my shelves for so long, I don't think that I need to keep taking up physical shelf space when I can just purchase it from the library. Purchase it from the library, acquire it from the library, get it from the library, you know what I mean. Next up in the stack is Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. I liked this book. This is not one that I'm getting rid of because I didn't like it. It's just this is the only one in the series that I have, and I didn't love the rest of the series, so I don't necessarily want to keep this one. I'm also really trying to cull my like contemporary romance because it's not a genre I read much of anymore, and so I literally have like a whole 3 bookcases of fantasy behind me and one measly little shelf of contemporary romance. So I'm culling those, and that's why I'm getting rid of this one. This is about a girl who is a party clown for her kids' parties. Her family also does like renovations and stuff like that. So this one is very, very, very spicy, but in a good way. It's also a little bit of a sports romance because I think Travis Ford, the love interest, is a Major League Baseball player. I'm all over the place with this description, but if you like baseball, you like Fix Her Up, you like quirky main characters, try this one. Next up, I'm going to be Unhauling the Deep by Nick Cutter. I really hope that Rye doesn't hate me for this one because she did gift this to me and it was on my wish list and one that I wanted to read, but I've tried a couple of Nick Cutter since putting this on my wish list and I've just not jived with his writing style. Might at some point try The Troop, but from even people that loved The Troop and gave it 5 stars, I've heard that they did not like The Deep. And so when I've already not liked a book of his and DNF'd it, I don't really want to read another one that is low on people's favorites because I'm not even sure I'm gonna like him anyway. I do know that he does a lot of body horror, he does some animal cruelty and things like that, which I don't love reading about unless it has a purpose. It just sets my teeth on edge a little bit. It's not something that I like to read about. So I think that I'm going to unhaul this one. Thank you so much, Rye, for gifting it to me. I feel terrible. I really like to try books that are gifted to me, but I think you'll be okay with it. So I'm gonna give this to someone that loves body horror and will have a great time with it. Next up we have The Dragon Lords Fool's Gold by John Hollins. This one I think is about a band of thieves that are trying to steal gold from a dragon. Again, this is not one that I've ever heard anything about. It is a fantasy story. I just have had this again for a while and I've never really gravitated toward it. And a lot of times when I'm doing these unhauls, I have books in the stack and I will pick it up and go, no, I think I'm gonna keep that and I will put it aside. But this one I just don't feel compelled to keep, so I do think that I'm going to pass it along. And this is a world ruled by dragons. It's where they kind of have all of the commerce. I think it's a cool premise. I just, again, it doesn't call to me, and so I am going to unhaul this one. Next up, we have Just the Nicest Couple by Mary Kubica. I read this one for a 72-hour, 24-hour, something like that vlog not too long ago, and I did not like this one. I think it was a lower 2-star. I just felt like it was very boring. I felt like the motivations of the characters didn't really make a whole lot of sense. We're following two couples where one of the wife's husband goes missing, and then we have another couple that is nice to them and kind of helps her through this hard time, but they know more than they're letting on. It's a very domestic thriller, but I didn't find it very thrilling, so I don't need to keep this. I have no intention of ever rereading it, nor do I really think that I'm going to be recommending it on my channel, so this one's gonna go. Next up, we have Plain Bad Heroines by Emily Danforth. This is one I did debate keeping, but I don't think that gothic horror, especially gothic horror that is this long, is really going to be for me. Something that I have learned recently is I'm not a huge fan of super long horror. I find that it drags and the suspense is a little bit gone when that happens. So unfortunately, I just think that this is not going to be for me. I've owned this since it was published long time ago, and I've not had any urge to pick it up. I might at some point get this again if the mood strikes me, but this is just a very gothic, I've heard, slow burn horror, which is maybe or may not even really that horror. So I think I'm just gonna let this one go. Next up, we have Devolution by Max Brooks. So this one is about Bigfoot and a world-ending Bigfoot. I liked the beginning part of this, not so much the end. The end, it did like the Adrian McKenty did the chain where it kind of went off the rocker a little bit. I liked the idea behind this. I love a super scientific horror, something that really brings in real world stuff and makes you feel like this could be real, like this could be a thing. And this did that in the beginning and then quickly didn't do it anymore. So I think I'm going to pass this one along as well. I do want to try to get to World War Z though, because I know a lot of people like that. And I didn't hate the writing style in here. I just thought that the plot went a little crazy. Next up, it pains me because it's so pretty, but I'm going to be getting rid of my edition of Snow Crash, Neil Stevenson. This one, I spent a lot of money to purchase and hated the beginning of this book. Cyberpunk is just not going to be my thing. The first like 2 chapters are a super high-speed pizza delivery, and I just did not love the super quirkiness, unserious side of this. It took forever for us to even get to a very semblance of a plot, and it was just seemingly, I don't know, too smart for me maybe? I'm not really sure, but as beautiful as this copy is, it just was not my thing. I didn't like the way it was written, and so I'm going to be getting rid of this so that someone else can enjoy this beautiful copy. Next up, we have What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This one is the Fall of the House of Usher retelling. It is a novella. I think there's a sequel that's coming out soon-ish. I really don't love historical. That was part of the problem in this, and I just didn't feel like it was very horrific. I didn't feel like there was even really a remote semblance of horror to this. I mean, we have creepy rabbits, but that's about it. And I ended up giving this one like a low 3-star. It was generally fine, but it's not something that I'm going to be thinking about. It's not something I'm going to reread, so I don't really need to keep it. Sorry if there's an angle change. I had to wait on my camera battery to recharge really quickly. But next up, we have The Hypnotist by Lars Kepler. I was planning to potentially keep this one, mostly because like it's got the best flop in the whole wide world. But I didn't love this first book, and so I'm like, am I gonna continue on with the series? I'm not really sure at this point. I gave this one a lower 3-star. I just felt like it was really bogged down in a lot of the details. It is a Norwegian, Scandinavian, wow, I am way off, mystery about a boy that ends up killing his family, or so they think, and so they get a hypnotist to come in and try to figure out what is going on with this whole investigation. There are 2 different plots, 2 different timelines. I just did not absolutely love this one, and so I'm like, am I going to continue? If I'm going to continue, I want to keep this, but if I'm not going to continue, I don't necessarily need to keep it. So let me know down in the comments if you think that I should continue on with this series, or if maybe I should just try to get the Kindle books from the library. Next, I have The King of Ashes by Raymond E. Feist. The only reason I'm getting rid of this one is because it is library binding, and it was not supposed to be library binding when I ordered it. I wanted the hardcover, but I did not want shiny with stickers, and I tried to take this off and you could not get it off, and then there were like stickers that were on the actual book cover too, not just the plastic. And so I was like, okay, I'm not gonna fool with this. This is not one that I'm planning to get to anytime soon. I will just repurchase it probably in paperback later down the line when I decide to read it. So this is a classic fantasy. Then I think I'm gonna unhaul The Wolf of Orenaro. This is a fantasy book that has gotten a lot of buzz around the internet. It was previously, I think, self-published and is now published by Orbit, and it is about a woman who is called the Bitch Queen, the she-wolf, because she murdered a man and exiled her king the night before they crowned her. And I thought that it was supposed to be like a really dramatic, sassy, main kind of character, but from people that I trust, having read this one recently, they did not love it. They found that the logic was not there. They were a little bit bored. I was considering starting this one and reading it so that I could potentially get on the Broken Binding sub, but I decided to pass on that one for now. So if I'm going to read this one, I think it can be a Kindle book. I don't think that I need to have a purchased physical copy of it. Next up, we have another Mary Kubica, and that is Local Woman Missing. This one I did like a lot better than just The Nicest Couple. It, if I'm remembering correctly, is about a girl that went missing, and then several years later, 11 years later, one of the girls that goes missing returns, but now another woman has gone missing. And there's a couple different timelines that are going on. I didn't like the twist at this one. I didn't love the end. I felt like it was kind of silly, but I liked the beginning part of it. I think this one was like a 3-star for me. It's a thriller that I will never reread, so I might as well not keep it on my shelves. Next up, we have Snowblind by Ragnar Johansson. This is a Iceland mystery, and I liked this book. I did find it a little bit slow. It's following a guy that was a policeman, and then he gets promoted to detective, but he has to go to this like remote city in order to do it, and someone ends up dead. There are a couple of different murders and things going on throughout the story. It was a lot of setup, and I did like it, but I did not love it. I was relatively bored throughout it, but I could consider continuing on in the series, kind of like The Hypnotist. I felt like these do have very similar vibes, but if I do, I probably won't need a physical copy of it. I can just, again, get it from the library. Next up, we have The Grey Bastards by Jonathan French. I started this one. It was one of the SPFBO books. I believe it was indie and then got republished, and I really didn't like it. This involves orcs, and it has very man is doing this, let's do this kind of vibe to it, and I was not having a good time. Orcs tend to be a certain type of personality that I just don't jive with in fantasy, and this happened to be that. I DNF'd it pretty quickly, I would say like less than 30 pages in, because I was not liking the writing style at all, so I do not need to keep a physical copy of this one. Then we have Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. Started this one, don't come for me, did not love it. I do think that I will read this, and I do think that I will read this in the near-ish future, but I don't think that I'm going to like this enough to need a physical copy of it, so I'm probably going to just get this one from the library when I do decide to read it, and since I feel that way, I don't need it taking up room on my shelves, but everyone knows what Interview with the Vampire is about. It doesn't have chapters, and that was bothering me, and then it does have a very classic writing style, and that was bothering me. I don't know what to tell you. I wasn't driving with it when I tried to read it, so Unhaul it goes. Next up, we have the first book in the Long Prince Quartet series by Daniel Abram. This is only getting unhauled because, and I think you may have already seen me unhaul The Mass Market, because Maria gifted me the entire series in hardcover for my birthday this year, so I do not need to keep this one, and that's the only reason I'm getting rid of it. It's about the Undat, who are a malevolent spiritual entity, and they are bound by the Order of the Poets. So sounds like a very classic fantasy, but one that I could enjoy. Also, I'm going to be getting rid of We Have Always Been Here by Lena Wynn. I started to read this one for Realmathon. It's supposed to be a sci-fi horror. It was extremely boring. It was about a woman that was on a ship that was going to go terraform another planet, but then her crew starts going insane and she's trying to figure out what's going on. There was not enough insane and too much feeling sorry for herself and talking about AIs and like this political implications of AIs that I just personally didn't care about. Then we have The Archive Undying. This one is an ARC, so I'm just going to be kind of like donating it and passing this one along. I thought it was going to be about killer AIs, but unfortunately it is a lot more about like society and the main quirky character with weird, pretty writing and also a very confusing plot line. I read this for the publisher battle. I gave it 2 stars. It was okay, I guess, but I don't think it set out what it was trying to accomplish, and it definitely didn't set out what the synopsis was trying to accomplish, so I don't have any desire to reread this one, and I don't need to keep it. Then unfortunately we have Pinata by Leopoldo Gout. I love this cover so very much, but I did not like the execution of this book. Unfortunately, it was pretty boring for me, especially in the beginning, and then by the time we hit the middle where things did get a little bit more interesting, I didn't really care, and I was hoping that this would have a lot more like Mexican culture and mythology and lore to it, but I didn't feel like that was the case. I felt like it was more of a, this is how Mexican culture is perceived now and her struggles, which there's nothing wrong with, but it wasn't what I was hoping from this. I really wanted to know more about the Mayan ruins, and I wanted to know more about this legend that could be coming for her daughter. Like, I really wanted to know about those true myths in Mexican history, but that was not exactly what this book was trying to do. So I think just going into it with the right expectations and knowing that it is a little bit on the slower pace side would behoove you. Next up, we have Paradise 1 by David Wellington. I wanted to love this book, but I really didn't. It felt like it was just action scene after action scene after action scene. It's supposed to be about these people that are on a ship to go to a planet called Paradise 1, but they get derailed on their way there and things start to go very badly. It is a sci-fi horror, but it just was too action-packed, so action-packed that it was boring. We didn't have any character development. We didn't have any real plot. The horror elements to me just weren't very fleshed out, so I ended up giving this one like a 1 star, maybe a 2, I can't remember, but I did not have the best time with it. Couldn't even really tell you how it ended other than it ends on a massive cliffhanger, but the fact that it ends on a cliffhanger and I can't tell you how it ended should tell you a lot about the book, at least in my opinion. Then I'm also going to be unhauling the Cruel Gods Book 1, The 13th Hour, as well as The Children of Chaos. This was in SPFBO 8 last year, and I did quite enjoy it and was gifted a copy of the sequel. I just don't think that I need to own these books. I think that these are going to be better Kindle reads for me, especially since the binding is pretty thick on them. I don't think that I'm going to want to hold this super heavy paperback, and I did not love the first book enough to need it on my shelves. This is a steampunk-like fantasy about time and gods, and I thought that the idea was really well done. There were some points in the execution that I did not love, but it was a really cool idea, and so I probably will move on to the sequel, just not anytime soon. And then the very last two on the last 4 minutes of my memory card are My Best Friend's Exorcism, Do Not Come For Me, and Horror Store, Do Not Come For Me by Grady Hendrix. Both of these were just generally okay to not great for me. I think that Grady Hendrix and I just are not made for each other. He does have a very quirky writing style with a lot of like poking fun at things, and he tends to focus on, like, this one is toxic friendships, and I forget exactly what this one's kind of like moral of the story was, but anyway, both of these I was relatively bored in, and I don't feel like they're very horror based. I feel like they're very much so more quirky horror, whereas I tend to like a more disturbing horror. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, and that is fine. I understand why people love these books. I totally do. I just don't think that they're the books for me, so I don't need to keep them. Okay, everybody, so that is all of the books that I am going to be unhauling for the summer. Let's count and see how many there are. 32, 33 books, not too shabby. That cleared up a lot of space on my shelves, and I really love the way that the new shelves are looking, so I'm glad to be giving these to a new and better home. Hopefully I didn't duplicate unhaul any of these you've seen before, because they just kind of go in a box in my closet and I forget that they exist, honestly. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out with me today. As always, links to my Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads are all in the description box down below. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe if you wanna, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!